Hello, everybody. Greetings to all. Welcome to the Snooker Hall podcast. I'm Dan Murrin, and for this episode, I'm joined by a most welcome guest. Not only is this guest one of the most improved players in snooker over the past few seasons, he is one of my favourite players to watch, and he is a member of my WST Fantasy 5, and he's doing quite well for me. He has appeared in 2 ranking event semi-finals this calendar year, and a further 2 quarterfinal appearances too. I'm delighted to welcome Elliot Slessor to the Snooker Hall podcast.
Hi mate, you alright? How are you doing?
Yeah, thanks for coming on. I appreciate your time.
No problem.
I always ask every guest who comes onto the Snooker podcast how they got into snooker in the first place. Their first memories, whether it be on TV, whether it's in a snooker hall. How did you get into the game?
I think it's the same story as everybody. At Christmas, I got a little table board for Christmas, and it kind of went from there, really.
And when did you realise that you might actually be quite good at this?
I was pretty alright from the off. I made my first century when I was 11, so I went from playing on the tiny little table in the house when I was about 7 or 8, and then as soon as I was fairly decent on there, my granddad took us to a local social club. And I started playing on the bigger tables and made my first century when I was 11.
Where did you grow up?
Gateshead. I'm originally from Gateshead, obviously in the northeast of England. And yeah, I grew up in Gateshead.
And your snooker heroes when you were a kid?
It's funny because most people always say Ronnie O'Sullivan, but mine was always John Higgins.
Okay,
It was always
that's
John.
normal.
Yeah, but most people around my age, they're all for Ronnie. I was always for John.
I suppose Ronnie's always had, I suppose that, I don't want to say that little bit more showmanship, but I suppose I can see why people are attracted to his style of play. I
Yeah.
suppose it does look more attractive. Even to casual fans, it would definitely be more attractive. And in terms of other sports, are you into football, tennis, rugby?
Football and boxing are probably me two of the biggest. Obviously, I follow Newcastle United. Go to most home games, go to as many away games as I can. But boxing's me biggest passion. I prefer to watch boxing to any other sport.
Do you indulge in boxing or?
No, never indulged. I don't think it'd be any good for the snooker.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, broken broken eye socket. That won't help you aiming up the shots. Yeah, but the snooker scene in the northeast, obviously, there's a few players around who come from that area of the country, area of the world.
Yeah.
Are there any of those who you will hang out with, or any of those players that you grew up with, competing against in junior
Um,
tournaments?
Junior wise, Sam Craigie was around when I was around. He's a touch older than me, but he was always around. Obviously, he's sadly away from the game at the minute with an injury, but I've no doubt he'll be back. Tremendous player. And who I spend most of my time was probably Dave Lilly.
Okay, yeah.
Go out for meals with him, and my wife's friends with his wife, and it sort of just works.
Do you practice with David or?
Yeah, well, obviously we used to a lot more when the calendar wasn't so busy, but because the calendar's so busy, you don't really have that much time to play anybody at the minute. It's just a case of hit some balls, turn up to the next one, hit some more balls, turn up the next one. It's all go, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I heard someone. Well, I shouldn't say I heard it. I saw somebody on Twitter saying that all the tournaments are just kind of blending into each other, and maybe a little gap between, even if it's just a few days of a gap between tournaments might. I know it's hard logistically, but
Kind of, but that's what you want. You can't have it always. If you want to be busy and you want to be earning good money, you need the two to be busy. It's all right for the top lads saying, "Oh, I want to break here and I want to break there," because they're generally running deep in every comp. Where people where I'm ranked and further down, they're not running deep in every comp. They might run deep in a couple back to back, and then they might lose the first round, and then do you know what I mean? So it's not all go for us. We do get little spaces of time unless you're a top player.
and in terms of this travel schedule, how hard is that, and do you enjoy it?
Um, don't get us wrong, it is hard, but I've got pals who are bricklayers and stuff like that, and they're out in the freezing cold for nigh on minimum wage, laying bricks all day with freezing cold hands in this sort of weather. We're sitting on a plane. You might be tired, but it's not as if it's sort of strenuous work. Do you know what I mean? So
Hmm.
you can't complain. Not in my opinion. I cannot complain about what I do for a living.
And in your spare time, how do you like to unwind? If you do have, yeah, I know you've got to practice, you've got to go to tournaments, but how do you chill out?
Um, well, obviously I've got a wife and a daughter, so they take up quite a lot of my time.
No
Um,
chilling out.
Not really, no. Just take the little one out. The odd time we go for meals and things, but it's generally pretty hectic if I'm honest.
And how old is your daughter, if you don't mind?
She's 4, she'll be 5
4.
in February.
Okay. So she's past the stage where, at this age, she'll be becoming a bit more independent as the years go by. So that's
She's at school and
good.
that, but she's just into everything. She's reading books and learning letters and it's homework. It's all go like.
Non-stop. Non-stop. Yeah. I asked you about who you practice. Do you like us? Well, to go back to the practice,
hmm
if you had the chance, would you prefer to practice with a partner, or do you like solo practice?
Generally, I prefer to play players. Like obviously, I'll have a game with Dave. I go up to Scotland quite regular. I'm playing McGill, Maguire, Higgins.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Sometimes go down to Leeds to play the likes of Sanderson, Lamb, Oliver Lines, Liam Pullen. But if when it's busy like this, you don't really have the time. It's just a few hours here and there playing your own.
But playing against players of this caliber, that's pretty good preparation. That'll keep you sharp.
Oh, absolutely. Like, with no disrespect, but going up to Scotland, you're picking a lot of balls out of pockets, especially for the likes of Maguire, McGill, and Higgins. But that's what you need. You need to find out where your game is before tournaments.
Yeah, if you can't push yourself against the best, then yeah, you'll never
Absolutely,
get out
I
of your comfort zone. It's yeah.
well the tournament winners, and if you're giving them a game or coming close to them, you give yourself a chance in any comp.
Mhm. Now, well, speaking of that, you have had better results over the last season or two. As I mentioned, at least
hmm
4 quarterfinals in decent ranking events this season. I mean, this is improvement compared to a few years before that. Is there something that you've changed, or is it just more experience? Has that helped you progress that a little bit more?
I think it's a mixture of a lot of things. I think I generally started doing a little bit better when my daughter was born. Obviously it wasn't lighting up trees or whatever, but do you know what I mean? I was generally getting a little bit more consistent. I started working with Chris Henry just before, not the UK, just gone, the one before, and I qualified for the UK straight away. We've been together ever since, so it's just a different sort of take into practice, doing different sort of routines that he wants you to do, and just little bits of different things. Just I think if you do the same thing forever and you expect different results, then you're only ever going to get the same stuff, aren't you? So you've got to try and change something up if it isn't working.
Yeah, it's insanity, isn't it? Doing the same thing over and over and expecting
So the
something
same.
something different. Now, this relationship you have with Chris Henry, I suppose I'm not alone when I ask this question. I'm sure many fans are curious how that works. Chris Henry, he won't work just with you, but
No.
how does that work? Is in terms of like his compensation? Does he take a cut of your earnings, or
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah.
so he gets X
He takes
percent
a
and
percentage base. Yeah.
okay? Because I'd always wondered how that works. If it's just a set fee, or this much for the year, or this much for how many hours of coaching, or okay, but it's a
Yeah, it's a percentage base depending on how high you are. Depends on the percentage you pay. So obviously, if you're climbing the rankings, you'll pay less than somebody who's sort of further down the rankings. So it's an incentive to climb the rankings because you're paying less.
I suppose it is pay for performance for him as well.
Yeah.
So if he is actually helping you, then he does well as well. Yeah, okay. No, I was curious about that.
All the coaches I've ever worked with, they've always worked on sort of a percentage sort of basis. I was working with Peter Ebdon before that, and everybody generally works on a percentage basis.
Your style of play, I always found it more fun to watch than most players. I'm not sure about the average shot time, but you seem to play a little bit quicker than most players. Is that a deliberate tactic, or is you just feel more comfortable doing this, or you just work on instinct?
Yeah, like before I started working with Chris, it was funny because I was very quick as a junior, very quick. Um, And sort of trying too hard got us playing too slowly. In a nutshell, really. And when obviously I was working with Chris, and he could sort of see the ability in the way I sort of suit playing. I'm more of an aggressive, natural type, where I was thought I was more the trying type. Like I would have to try very hard to put balls down holes, where in theory I don't. I've got enough ability to sort of to get by, not trying, but on more ability than try, if that makes any sense. So naturally, relying on my ability a bit more than trying is sort of seen as play a lot quicker. So I don't know what I'm averaging now, but in most games, if I play well, I'm around 18, 19 seconds, which so it's not the quickest, but it's certainly not the slowest. It's at the quicker end of players to slower.
No, I would agree. I would agree. And I think part of this, and I don't know if you noticed that you do it or not, I've noticed that even if you've just won a frame, I've noticed that you'll go and take some of the balls out of the pockets and just roll them down towards to the to help the referee get the next frame going a bit quicker. So
Yeah,
I guess it's that momentum.
you just want to get on with the next frame. Like you don't get paid for overtime.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, you get paid the same. Yeah.
Especially if you've just made a one visit or something and your opponent sat there, you want to kind of get the balls up and try and get back in the balls as quick as possible to sort of keep that flow going. But obviously, even if I've lost the frame, you'll still see us generally get the balls out of the hole quite a bit, because you just want to get on with the next frame instead of the worst part generally of playing snooker matches is just sitting waiting around for the balls to be set up, or somebody goes to the toilet or whatever. I understand people need the toilet sometimes, but some are going out. I don't know. A lot of them are just going out, I think, for the sake of it. But I can't really be bothered with that. I'd rather just none of would go, throw the balls up, and just crack on. Do you know
Yeah.
what I mean?
Yeah. If you need to go, you go. But and I do think some people use this as a tactic. There was one of the, I forget who it was now, but there was one player sitting in the chair for about 5, 6 minutes, and okay, maybe nature called the opponent, but I kind of felt that it went on a bit long. And
Yeah, as I say, you see some players and they're going out literally every frame, and like, if unless they've drank so much water before they've went on, but I think that's unlikely. I think most people are just going out to. I don't even. The daftest thing is I don't even think it gains an advantage. I think they're just wasting not only your time but their own time, and obviously when once this match is over, you've generally got to get home anyway, so they're wasting their own time. Instead of just getting on and playing, it's not going to change anything. The balls are still going to end up in the same places, regardless how long you've been out the next frame. Do you know what I mean? So it's a little bit annoying, really. It's unnecessary.
I spoke to Fergal O'Brien recently, and the idea came up that you can train, you can be coached, you can practice, you can learn, you can improve. But there's one part of the game which you just cannot control, and that is what your opponent does. And if you're sitting in the chair while your opponent's knocking in a century, there's literally nothing you can do about it. How do you cope with that in terms of
It
frustration or
it's a funny one for me, because if my opponent's got in off his own accord and knocks a good long ball in or whatever, that's fair enough. The problem I have is when I make mistakes. That's what annoys me. If I've missed an easy ball and then you sit and watching them mop up the balls that you should be potting, that's that's sort of when you get annoyed. But if you break off and they put a long red and make 100, I'd be the first to go, oh, good break, do you know what I mean? But if I've missed a black off the spot and left the reds absolutely everywhere, then it gets on my nerves.
yeah? No, I saw that. Just I was watching Long Too Wang earlier, and against Joe O'Connor, and he did just that. He split the
Yeah.
balls and he left Joe right in, and then he lost the frame. So
Yeah.
no, it's yeah. On a different part of the game, earlier in the season, you did some commentary at the Championship League. Now,
Yeah,
I
the
quite liked it. I quite liked your work. I thought it was pretty good. To
yeah,
the point where you shouldn't notice the commentator, but you should. It's that mix between knowing and not knowing that they are
yeah,
there. What's your approach to this?
yeah. I enjoyed it. I just like to think I call a spade, and I just tell the truth. If somebody played a good shot, I'll tell you they've played a good shot. If they've played a poor shot, I'll tell you they've played a poor shot. I think that's the only way to it. It's pointless masking over things and saying, "Oh well." he's got a kick here or this, that, and the other. He's just played a bad shot half the time, so just call it for what it is. And if he's played a great shot, he's played a great one.
I've compared a couple of commentators. Neil Folds, I'm a big fan of because he will do just that, and he will
Yeah,
use the word dreadful, awful, or fantastic, no matter what it is. He will tell you as it is, and I think we should trust someone like Neil Folds, who's played at the top
yeah,
level. There are other commentators who I think they overuse the words unfortunate, unlucky, bad run of the
yeah.
ball, things like that. Well, it can't all be bad run of the ball. Sometimes the players just not planned the shot properly or they've executed it poorly. I would prefer an honest analysis of the game from the commentator. I mean, given the fact that you know and you've played against the vast majority of these players, does your knowledge of their game come into the commentary, or do you just try and blank that out and just say what
Kind
you
of.
see?
Like, you say what you see, but obviously, I'm not going to name names here, but you see some commentators who don't know who half the players on the tour are. Which, for me, if you're getting paid the money that they're getting paid, I think that's an absolute disgrace, if I'm honest. You're getting paid fortunes worth of money to tell the general public who these players are. You should know who they are. Like, I tell you who I think is unbelievable at her job, Hazel Irvine. I think she is unbelievable. She can tell you everything about every player, how many qualifiers, what the score was, how many breaks over 50, because she does her research. She does what she's paid to do. And I just think the game's changed as well. Some of the older generation of the commentators from the 70s or whatever, like, the game's changed. They don't play half of the shots that they call because they don't play a game what was based in the 70s. They play a game what's based now all about scoring and long balls. That's the way the game is these days. And I don't think it's not their fault because the game was different then, but I don't think they fully understand the new sort of scoring game. But if you listen to somebody like Hendry or whatever, for example, he'll tell you the scoring game. McManus is one of my favourites. I think McManus is brilliant because one, he does his research. Two, he knows who all the players are, and three, he knows every shot in the book. Don't think he can go wrong.
Yeah, and he's done it at the highest level. Former
Oh,
Masters champion,
absolutely,
of
yeah,
course. So it's
absolutely.
yeah. And the day that he doesn't know what he's talking about is a day we should all give up. Really, it's
And people think as well because he hasn't been retired that long, he's played the modern way. He's understood how the game has changed from, say, the early 90s when he was winning tournaments. He's seen how the game has progressed, conditions have progressed, everything's progressed really. That's why the standard's so high.
no. I would say the depth is better than it's ever been, and
Yeah, it's insane. There is no
yeah.
shocks anymore. There is no shocks. Whether the world champion turns up to the tournament and is playing number 80 in the world, you see it all the time, and it's still called a shock. Happens 3 times a season, roughly. Can't be a shock. Anybody can lose to anybody on any given day because the standard is that high now. Anybody.
I saw Kyron Wilson today. He played Stephen Maguire. Not Stephen Maguire. How many ranking events he won? 6, 7,
Yeah, I can't
loads.
feel.
Yeah, a few. But the reactions I saw on social media is that it's a massive shock. Okay, he's beating Kyron Wilson, but Kyron Wilson, he's a good player. He's world champion, of course. But this is Stephen Maguire. It's not. It's not like he's playing me. That would be a shock. But it's
Yeah, but even if it's somebody, don't get us wrong, Stephen's pedigree's up for all to see. He's won copious amounts of tournaments, big comps as well. Yeah, obviously Kyron's favourite on paper. He's world champion winning tournaments, but it doesn't mean on any given day, especially best of seven as well. Anything can happen. Like, you can lose 4-0 to anybody in this day and age in a best of seven if they turn up and play well because ranked number 100 can go 4-1 visits and give you no shots. Seen it. I've played them games against number 100 in the world and come off and lost 4-0 and went, I couldn't really done any different. He played like a top player. Shake his hand, well played, and get back in your car and drive home.
yeah, on
That's
you go.
it.
Yeah. When it comes to this commentary gig that you did, who gave you advice? Who guided you? Is there anyone you tried to not emulate, but is there anyone you? Well, you said Hazel Irvine, but when it comes to the actual commentary, who do you look up to in that sense?
So the day I done the commentary, I've done it with Dave Hendon and Phil Yates. Obviously, I would say my style of commentating is different to them. They're all about the facts and very well read and history and stuff like that. Whereas I thought I sort of took the more the players role to try and describe the shots that they were going to play. where they would tell you what's happened in the last 5 matches, how their seasons went, and stuff like that. Where I thought it was more my role to go, right, well, he's going to get low on the black, split these red, land on. Do you know what I mean? Like more the snooker sort of player's role. That's the way I kind of try to do it.
No, I've mentioned a few times on the podcast that this mix of styles, whether it be
Mhm.
a current player or a former player, and maybe someone who was never a player at a good level anyway,
Yeah,
I think that mix is quite good. So, for example, Dave Hendon and Ken Doherty, that would be
yeah,
a perfect combination for someone who's played, well, literally former world champion, and yes, and somebody who I'm pretty sure he said he could struggle to knock in a 20 break. So, but you're getting two sides
yeah.
of knowledge in that way rather than having two players. It's maybe it would be a bit lopsided in terms of the information going out to the audience. Is it something you would like to continue doing? Or
Yeah, like I enjoyed it. Obviously, the snooker takes priority, but obviously, if I was out of a tournament and they were wanting somebody new in the box, of course, I would be interested in doing it. It's something I do. Do you know what I mean? I don't feel like I would ever sort of be caught out of what's going on. You see other players getting into it now. Don't get us wrong, the pedigree's a lot higher than mine. The likes of Murphy's in there now. Mark Allen does a bit, Kyron Wilson, and I think it's nice to see new faces because the old faces aren't going to be there forever. So I think it is up to sort of the next generation. Don't get us wrong, them players are a bit older than me, but obviously if they were ever stuck for somebody, I'd put my name in the hat. Sure, definitely, I.
that's a pretty good segue because speaking of out with the old and in with the new, what is your opinion on the Crucible debate? Brexit.
Um, right, I might upset some people here, but as I say, I tell you, a spade's a spade, and I like to tell you the truth. So I've played there twice. Obviously it's an iconic venue, but in the grand scheme of things, they're on about trying to make it a global sport and grow the game. Fair enough. Keep it at the Crucible if you put the prize money up, but the prize money has stayed the same the last 8 years for qualifying. That doesn't seem like a growing game to me. Like, and that's the pinnacle. That's the Everest of your sport. You've got other countries that are rumored to be giving millions to the winner. Like, I'm not being funny, yeah, but I'm going to do some maths for you.
Go on.
The winner of this year got 500,000. So he's got tax out of that. He's got 2.5% to World Snooker out of that. He might also have to pay, I don't know, a coach or a manager or something out of that. So let's say he takes 300,000, 350,000 out of that. You can't even buy a nice house in London for that. And that's the Everest of the game. You've climbed the biggest stage, done every person's childhood dream, and you're not a millionaire out of it. That blows my brains. Considering if that is the pinnacle of the sport, if a game as big as snooker, you should be a millionaire, in my opinion. In the other countries what are offering to put this on, the figures I'm hearing through other players and as such, is they're on about making it millions for the winner. So, and don't get us wrong, I have no problem with it staying at the Crucible, but the prize money has to stack up. It can't stay the same. But I also feel sorry for people missing out on it as well, because I think it only sits, is it 985 or something? Just less than a
Something like that.
thousand.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people want to watch it. And there's nowhere to sort of build on top of it. I understand the history, but history doesn't pay bills. It simply doesn't pay bills. And if the lads further down are qualifying, they're getting 20,000, and they're taking it to Saudi or Shanghai or wherever it may be, and it's 100 for qualifying. I think it's going to sell itself. And from what Barry says, he wants the game to grow, and I think it'll be a matter of time before it leaves the Crucible, in my opinion.
I I think the figure I said was if it was an extra £100 for the winner for
Hmm.
taking it away from the Crucible, no one would want to go.
No, no, I
So
wouldn't know.
yeah, but if it's an extra 100,000 for the winner, just as a ballpark figure I mentioned, that would turn some heads because I mean ultimately players are playing for their livelihoods. They're playing to put food on the table, to pay bills, to support their families. okay, the nostalgia is nice, and some people would rank that above other things, but some people don't. But that's why it's become such a debate. I saw it was Ken Doherty. He's a big fan of the Crucible. He thinks it should stay there, and he thinks that maybe the price that you pay isn't worth it for what you would lose from the aura of the tournament. So it's
I'm not having a pop at Ken here, but he's won all his tournaments. He's banked all his money. His CV's stacked up. He's world champion. Won a lot of other tournaments. He sort of made his money out of the game and made it back in a time where property and things was a lot cheaper. So he's probably he's obviously done very very well out the game. But what I'm saying is, in this day and age, is by the time everything's took off tax and X Y Z, and you win the world for 500, it's nowhere near 500. And if you are like a lot of the lads what are on this tour that live down south, they'd clear about 300, 350. You can't get nothing in London for that. You know yourself, you can hardly get a garage in London for 100. It's fact, isn't it?
yeah, it's true. No, things are expensive now. It's more expensive than they were 8 years ago. Anyway, that's true.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm. So you played at the Crucible twice.
Yeah.
Which other venues have you really enjoyed playing at?
I like the Tempodrome. a lot
Oh,
of
oh
people
yeah.
moan. A lot of people moan about the lighting, but I think it's like a crucible on steroids. I really do. I think because the crowds are close as well, and obviously it's so busy, so well supported. One of the best supported tournaments I think we've got. But obviously you see on TV the Ali Pali looks unbelievable for the Masters. Obviously would love to play there. Haven't had the opportunity to play there yet, but that looks unbelievable as well. But personal experience, I would say the Tempodrome.
Hmm. I'm going to both this season. Actually, I'll be at the Masters for the opening day and a
Mm.
few other days as well. But I'm going to the final of the German Masters. I'm flying down because I'm in Copenhagen. It's 45-minute flight down to Berlin. I'm going down for the weekend. Really, really looking forward to that. I've never been, but everyone seems to say that not only is the venue really good, but the organisation of the event is
Yeah, it
fantastic.
is. Yeah.
And
Well, I'm
the
good
play,
friends with Dave Gilbert, and he obviously got to the final there a few years ago against Kyron. And he'd never been to the semis before that when it goes to one table. And he said the atmosphere in there, because it's a long walk, you walk from up into the crowd all the way down. And he said it was honestly electric. He said it was one of the best atmospheres he's ever walked down. And he's played in obviously semi-finals of the Crucible, one table. He's played obviously at the Masters quite a few times, Ali Pali, and he said so you can't really play in more venues than Dave Gilbert, and he was saying it was one of the best atmospheres he's ever been in. Like,
no, I'm looking forward to that. I think it would be a really good
but what
event.
I
But
like as well is it's really busy from the first few rounds, whether it's the last 64 or whatever's left after that. It's busy. I think it's 2,500 full, and it's probably got about at least 2,000 all the way until like the semis. Well, it'll be sold out from there. It's really good, really
no,
really good.
atmosphere does make it. We've all seen it. Some of the events, maybe they're not as well supported, shall we say? We see a
Yeah,
crowd with 4 people, 5 people, 8 people in the audience. It doesn't look good. And I would say even some of the late night finishes at the Scottish Open this week,
yeah,
the crowd's been pretty sparse. But yeah, 2,000 people watching snooker, that's pretty good.
it is. It's always like that. Like I've been to the Temperdome quite a few times now, and it's always busy. But I just suppose obviously it's like time of year as well. Like obviously there's tournaments on in Scotland. It's just before Christmas. Scotland isn't, I don't know how it says, but it's not classed as one of the most wealthy places, even though
Yeah.
Edinburgh is generally very wealthy. But you've got the Christmas markets and things on. But realistically, a lot of people are going there just to watch a Christmas market or to take their family around. They're not going to watch snooker. So you can kind of understand it. But it's just timing. It's just timing. But obviously, the lads would prefer the tournament on, whether there was nobody there or whether there was a trillion there. Do you know what I mean? You'd rather have it on than not because it's
Yeah.
earning opportunities for them. But you can see why there's less there at this time of year than say maybe if it was in, I don't know, a few months earlier. Hmm.
Mm. Um, just a few general questions. The most outrageous fluke that you have seen, either you've pulled off or that your opponent has, well, I'd say pulled off. But
There's been a few. on both. I tell you what, the one I had in the shootout in the first rounds, I couldn't.
Oh yeah, yeah, that was
Um,
good. Yeah,
well, probably that one because of the time limit. Because if that doesn't
yeah,
drop, I'm away home. So I'm going to say that one.
yeah, yeah. That's a good shout. Actually, speaking of that frame, so it's the lowest scoring frame in shootout
Yeah,
history, and one of the balls was a fluke. I mean, what happened there? Because you see, obviously, Sean Murphy last year hit a maximum, so it can be done if the circumstances are right. But
yeah.
in that case, obviously not. But it's how do you adjust your tactics like mid-frame? You have to
I
evolve so
just
quickly. It's
I just think it was just one of them frames. It wasn't like we turned down everything. It was just a sort of all the balls were there, but you didn't want to go for one and leave the whole frame on if you missed. So it was like we're both playing good safety shots until I don't know 8 minutes in, and then he's clipped a great red in, and I thought, oh, well, could be time to go home. And then I've obviously got that horrible clip and flicked the red.
you'll take it. Yeah. No, I
I
always say
will take it.
luck is only a fluke is only worth it if you can capitalize on it. And
I didn't. I got beaten the last 16.
that's true. Yeah. Fair enough. Um, and speaking of the shootout, you have been collecting shirts from other
Yeah.
players. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I had an idea. Obviously before the shootout started. I normally do something for charity every year with it anyway. I generally try and change the charities about. So I've done Alzheimer's one year. I've done a few other different ones, and I thought children's cancer this year. Um, one of me, one of my friends works on the children's cancer ward, so I thought obviously try and give them as good a Christmas as they can possibly have. So we've raised just over £2,000 for them. Um, we've got a date to go in. We're going on the 18th of December. They've given a wish list of what all the sort of kids were wanting, ranging from Play-Doh to portable DVD players. And with the money that we've raised, we can actually clear the wish list that they've sent to her, plus a few more extra bits. So I'm made up with that really. I only wanted to try and raise 1,000, and obviously with everybody's help and all the other players, what I'm very very grateful to put their shirts in as well. We've managed to raise just over 2,000, so it's phenomenal, really.
And these are signed shirts as well. You said.
Yeah, yeah. So some are signed, but I can get them all signed if people are wanting them. Some don't want them signed. Some are wanting them signed. So yeah, just getting them posted out to people. It's been a busy few days.
2 grand, you said.
2 grand I've raised for the kids. Oh, no money's going to me. All the money's for the
No,
kids for
that's
Christmas presents. Every
it's not
penny.
not a bad return. Not a bad return. And speaking of youngsters, what advice would you give to any youngsters who are thinking about having snooker as a career?
Obviously, if it's something you love and something that you want to pursue, obviously practice very hard, um, and try your best. But in other ways, I would actually say you've got to be exceptionally good to make a modest living, because unless you sort of in the 32 or close to the 16, that's when the rewards come. Obviously, some of the lads further down, I've been there myself. It's tough near the bottom, very tough near the bottom. You're struggling to make ends meet, and it's you can say you're a professional snooker player, but unless you're sort of earning professional snooker players' money, it's tough to be called it, isn't it? Really.
So hard work is the most important
Oh, absolutely.
factor.
You've got to love it though. You have to love it. Like if you're going through, especially the early days. Like I'm sort of past that sort of stage. Like it's more of a job to me now. But in your early days, when you love it, practicing's very easy. Obviously, as you get older and older and take more beatings and get more scars, it's harder to keep going to practice every day and know what's coming.
I want to say thank you for your time. I really appreciate getting a player's insight, especially in the modern game. It's good to get different views from different parts of the game. So I appreciate you taking the time to do this. And if someone were interested in one of the shootout shirts, where would they find them?
The bidding's closed now. All the shirts have gone. They've all gone. Um, I don't know. Obviously, I seen Mark Allen has put one of his shirts up separate to mine. I don't know if his is still available, but sadly, the bidding on mine's all closed now.
Fair
We're
enough.
just collecting in all the money and obviously going to get the toys.
Okay. No, thank you so much for your time, and good luck for the rest of the season.
No problem, mate. Thank you. Appreciate that.
Cheers.
Cheers, mate. Thank you.
A huge thank you to Elliot Slessor for taking the time to speak on the Snooker Hall podcast. He certainly does call a spade. He says what he thinks, and maybe we could use more of that kind of attitude in snooker. The latter stages of the Scottish Open are upon us. A few high-profile withdrawals from the event early. Judd Trump, Mark Williams, and Ronnie O'Sullivan. This is divided opinion. In many ways, I don't have a problem with it. A player takes that decision, they know the consequences. Judd Trump, as an example, he isn't short of ranking points this season. He can afford to skip this event in terms of money and ranking. He's so far ahead at number one on the 1 year list that he can pick and choose. Ronnie O'Sullivan, on the other hand, he pulled out at the last minute, to nobody's surprise. He's outside the top 16 on the 1 year list. I wouldn't be surprised if he skips the Welsh Open, again with very little notice. So unless he has a good run at the World Open and the German Masters, he's at risk of missing out on the Players' Championship and the Tour Championship. He should be good for the Grand Prix in Hong Kong, of course. It's an event overseas. Ronnie O'Sullivan will be there. But that's his call. He knows the score. He knows his ranking will take a hit. The bit which irks me is the last-minute nature of the announcement. Ronnie is a draw. He knows it. We all know it. I'll be at the opening day of the Masters, and I'm really, really looking forward to seeing Ronnie O'Sullivan versus John Higgins on a stage like that. Who knows how many more chances we'll have to see it. And I'm someone who feels that Ronnie is not the be-all and end-all. I think the sport will be absolutely fine when he hangs up his cue. He's on the path to doing that anyway. He's becoming more and more part-time as the months pass, but he ain't skipping the Masters. It will take an act of God to keep him from defending his crown there. What was my point? Yes, players know the score when they withdraw from tournaments like this. Kyron Wilson has got a bit of stick this season for a number of rants about TV time, about table conditions, but nobody can accuse him of snubbing tournaments. Not everyone will agree with everything he says, and that's fine. Okay, he lost in the Scottish Open, a good performance from Stephen Maguire, but Kyron still turned up. In fact, these withdrawals from other high-profile players probably just made the tournament even more attractive to Kyron Wilson. The Scottish Open so far has been a great event. There's been really, really good snooker on show. The defending champion went out in the opening match to Long Zhiwang, a representative of my WST Fantasy 5. He's doing all right for me. But there's been other cracking matches as well. Next week, I will round up all of the action in Edinburgh and a quick recap of the Shootout 2 with Kelly Barker. Keep an eye on your podcast feeds for that episode. Stay warm, enjoy the snooker, and until next week, take care.